She was paid to ruin his blind date. But the single dad CEO millionaire fell in love instead. Hello everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It is quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let us return to our main character. It all began on a chilly Friday evening in downtown Seattle. The golden lights from the restaurant windows spilled across the wet pavement like melted honey. Inside, soft music played, silverware clinked against porcelain, and every table looked like it belonged in a magazine. But Lila James did not feel like she belonged there at all. Her black dress was borrowed from her roommate, the hem uneven where she had tried to fix a tear. Her hands trembled slightly as she read the message glowing on her old phone. Table 9. Spill the drink. Make a scene. $300 when it is done. Her heart pounded. $300. Enough to buy her little brother's medication and pay 2 weeks of overdue rent. The job had come through a girl she knew from the diner. Just cause a little chaos, the girl had said. Nothing illegal. Lila took a shaki breath. She was not proud of what she was about to do, but desperate people rarely had the privilege of pride. She pushed through the glass doors. The warm air inside smelled of truffle and wine. Every sound seemed louder than it should be. The whisper of linen, the scrape of chairs, the faint laugh from somewhere behind her. Table 9, she murmured to herself, scanning the room. Then she saw him. A man in his mid-30s sat alone near the window, dressed in a dark gray suit that fit like it was made for him. His tie was loosened, his hair slightly tousled. He looked like the kind of man who carried weight in the world, yet carried sadness in his eyes. Lila hesitated. For a moment, guilt clawed at her chest. But then she remembered the unpaid bills sitting on her kitchen counter and forced herself to move. She grabbed a water glass from a nearby tray and stepped toward him. The plan was simple: trip, spill, apologize loudly, make him look foolish. She rehearsed it in her mind. But when she reached the table, he looked up. His eyes were warm brown, steady, and unexpectedly gentle. "You look a little lost," he said. His voice was low, calm, and kind. The line she had prepared vanished. Her breath caught. "Oh, I am sorry, I thought." She stumbled, and before she could finish, the water slipped from her fingers, splashing across the white tablecloth in his sleeve. Gasps rose from nearby diners. "Oh my God, I am so sorry," Lila cried, grabbing napkins to dab at his suit. The man stood, but instead of anger, there was only a faint smile. "It is all right," he said softly. "Accidents happen." The kindness in his tone stunned her. Most men in expensive suits would have scolded her, called the manager, demanded compensation. But this man simply pulled off his jacket, blotting the water himself. "I really am sorry," she whispered. "Do not worry," he said. "I could use a reason to take a break from work anyway." That single moment, his patience, his calm, made something twist inside her. She had been sent to humiliate him, yet here he was, treating her as if she mattered. Lila backed away, cheeks burning. "Enjoy your evening," she mumbled, and hurried toward the exit. Outside, the air was cold and sharp. She leaned against the wall, breathing hard, the envelope of guilt heavier than the money she would soon receive. Behind her, through the glass, the man watched her go. His name was James Cole, a single father and CEO who had agreed to a blind date only because his daughter had begged him to try being happy again. Now he stood alone, puzzled by the stranger who had burst into his night like an accident that somehow felt fated. As the rain began to fall, neither of them knew that this small mistake, this single clumsy moment would change both of their lives forever. Rain still fell softly against the windows of Lila's small apartment that night. The hum of traffic outside mixed with the rattle of the old heater. She sat at a chipped wooden table, her elbows pressed against its edge, counting the few crumpled bills in her wallet. It was barely enough for groceries, not enough for rent, and nowhere near enough for her little brother's medicine. Her phone buzzed once. A message from an unknown number appeared. "Payment sent. Job done." All. Lila's stomach twisted. She had done what was asked, yet instead of relief, she felt a strange ache, the the image of the man at the restaurant still vivid in her mind, his calm voice, his eyes that had not judged her, his gentle smile when he said, "Accidents happen." She had expected arrogance, anger, humiliation. But James Cole had only shown kindness. And somehow, that made everything worse. Lila rose and crossed the narrow room to where a sketchbook lay open on her bed. It was worn at the corners, filled with sketches of strangers she had served at the diner. She picked up a pencil, hesitated, then began to draw the man from earlier that evening. The way his hair fell near his temple, the curve of his jaw, the quiet patience in his expression. Her hand trembled as the picture took shape. When she finished, she stared at it for a long time. "You are too kind," she whispered, as if he could hear her through the page. She closed the book and hugged it to her chest. A knock came at the door. It was her landlord, Mr. Harris, his arms crossed, his tone flat. "Rent was due last week, Lila. I cannot keep waiting forever. Please, just a few more days," she said. "I will pick up extra shifts. I promise." "You said that last month." His eyes softened slightly, but his voice did not. "I need payment by Friday. After that, I will have to find another tenant." "Oh." When the door closed, the silence felt heavier than before. Lila sank onto the edge of the bed, her chest tight. She glanced again at the sketchbook and thought of her brother, of the hospital bill folded inside her purse. Everything felt like a wall closing in. Across the city, in a penthouse high above the Seattle skyline, James Cole sat at his desk, still thinking about the woman who had spilled water all over his table. He should have been angry, yet instead he found himself curious. She had looked terrified, but not guilty. More like someone who had stumbled into the wrong place at the wrong time. He turned the small lion-shaped pin in his hand, the one his daughter had given him before she went to bed that night. "For courage," she always said. James smiled faintly, but his thoughts returned to that stranger with the dark eyes and trembling hands. Down in her apartment, Lila wiped her eyes and stood up. She could not let shame drown her. Tomorrow she would ask for more hours at the diner, maybe deliver coffee on weekends. She would pay the rent, she would buy the medicine, she would fix her life one day at a time. She reached for her phone and blocked the unknown number. Then she opened her sketchbook again and tore out the drawing. For a moment she almost threw it away, but something inside her stopped her hand. She folded the page carefully and slipped it between the worn covers. "Tomorrow will be better," she whispered. Outside, the rain had slowed to a mist. The city lights reflected on the wet streets, like broken stars. Somewhere across town, a man named James was staring at the same night sky, wondering if fate had just sent him a sign disguised as a clumsy accident. Neither of them knew it yet, but the storm that had brought them together was far from over. The next morning, the air in Seattle was cool and pale. Sunlight slipped through the blinds of Lila's small apartment, brushing across the sketchbook still resting on her table. She sat with a cup of instant coffee in her hands, her eyes heavy from another sleepless night. For the first time in weeks, she had no energy left for panic, only quiet resolve. She tied her apron and left for work. The diner was already busy when she arrived, filled with the clatter of plates and the low hum of morning conversation. The smell of bacon and brewed coffee lingered in the air. Her coworker, Marcy, glanced up from the counter. "You look like you fought the rain and lost," Marcy teased gently. Lila managed a small smile. "Something like that." She clocked in, tied her hair back, and began her shift. As she poured coffee for the regulars, her mind kept drifting to the night before. The moment the glass slipped, the way he had smiled instead of shouting, the calm voice that had said, "Accidents happen," it replayed in her head like a scene from a film she could not stop watching. By noon, she had made up her mind. She would forget the stranger in the suit and focus on what mattered: her family. She took her lunch break at a quiet corner booth, pulled out her sketchbook, and flipped to the drawing of him. The pencil lines caught the light like faint silver scars. She sighed, then began sketching again, adding the small lion pin on his lapel that she had noticed too late that night. It was shaped like a child's toy, a lion mid-roar, full of courage. As she shaded the lines, a thought came. Maybe he wore it for someone he loved. That simple idea warmed her chest for the first time in days. Across the city, James Cole sat in his office, distracted by the same memory. His assistant was talking about contracts and numbers, but his mind kept returning to that woman's face. Her eyes had been full of something he recognized: fear, pride, and exhaustion, all tangled together. It was the look of someone who had been fighting alone for far too long. When the meeting ended, he leaned back in his chair and opened the small drawer beside him. Inside was the lion pin, slightly bent from the water spill. He turned it in his fingers. His daughter Emma had given it to him before his first business trip years ago. "For courage, Daddy," she had said, "so you do not forget to be kind." James smiled at the memory and pinned it back onto his suit. For some reason, the gesture felt right that day. Back at the diner, a group of children passed by the window on their way home from school. Lila watched them from her booth. Their laughter filled the air outside, bright and easy. She thought of her brother again, his small smile, even in the hospital bed, and she whispered, "I will get you home, Danny. I promise." She closed the sketchbook and slipped it into her bag, unaware that in another part of the city, the very man she was sketching was thinking of her too. That evening, Lila finished her shift and stayed behind to clean the counter. The manager handed her a note. "Someone left this for you earlier." It was folded neatly, with no name. Inside were just 2 words, written in careful handwriting. "Courage, always." Lila froze. Her heart thudded. No one else knew about the lion pin, or what it meant. For a long moment she stood still, listening to the faint hum of traffic outside. The city lights blinked against the dusk like distant fireflies. She slipped the note into her apron pocket and looked out the window, wondering if fate was teasing her or trying to tell her something. Across the city, James Cole stood by his office window, watching the same sunset sink behind the skyline. He had sent that note earlier, unsure why. Maybe to remind himself that kindness was never wasted. Maybe to see if that clumsy, mysterious woman would ever find the courage to cross his path again. Neither of them knew it yet, but that single word courage had already begun to pull their lives toward each other once more. 2 days later, the morning sky over Seattle was pale and restless, clouds drifting low like smoke. Lila pulled on her faded jacket and tucked her sketchbook under one arm before hurrying down the block toward the little cafe on Madison Avenue. She had taken a weekend shift delivering pastries to local businesses. It paid only a few extra dollars, but every bit mattered. Inside the cafe, the air smelled of roasted beans and vanilla syrup. She loaded the paper cups into a tray, balancing them carefully before stepping outside again. The delivery slip read, "Cole Industries, Main Tower, 20th floor." Her breath caught for a moment when she read the name, but she shook it off. Cole was not an uncommon name in the city. 20 minutes later, she stood in the marble lobby of the skyscraper, feeling very small beneath the vaulted ceiling. The receptionist gave her a polite smile. "Deliveries go straight up to the executive lounge," the woman said. 20th floor. Lila nodded, stepped into the elevator, and pressed the button with trembling fingers. The soft hum carried her upward. As the doors opened, she was met by quiet music and the scent of polished wood. "Coffee delivery," she called softly. A man turned from the window. For a heartbeat, neither of them moved. It was him, James Cole. He looked almost the same as that night, except the daylight softened the sharpness of his features. Recognition flickered in his eyes, followed by surprise and something gentler. "Miss James, right?" he said, remembering the name she had murmured while apologizing. Lila swallowed. "Lila, yes. I work part-time with Bluefinch Cafe. Your assistant ordered the drinks." He nodded slowly, stepping closer. "So we meet again." His smile was small but genuine. "Do I get to keep my suit dry this time?" Her face warmed. "I promise there will be no water this time. Only coffee." He laughed softly, a sound that felt out of place in the sterile office air. "Good. I could use it. It has been one of those mornings." She handed him the tray, and for a second their fingers brushed. It startled her how natural it felt. She noticed the small lion pin still on his lapel, gleaming faintly in the light. "That pin," she said before she could stop herself. "It is special?" James looked down, then smiled faintly. "My daughter gave it to me. She says it keeps me brave." Lila's heart softened. She must be a wonderful little girl. She is, he said quietly, too wise for her age. The elevator dinged behind her, breaking the silence. Lila stepped back. I should go. I still have a few stops left. He hesitated, then reached for his wallet. Wait. At least let me pay you myself. She shook her head. It is already taken care of. Besides, I am trying not to spill anything today. He smiled again, that same calm warmth that had stayed with her for days. Then let me return the favor. There is a small park down the block. My daughter loves feeding the ducks there. Join us tomorrow morning. No pressure, just coffee. Real coffee this time. For a moment, she could not speak. Every sensible part of her said to decline to stay far away from the man she had once been paid to embarrass. But something in his voice, steady and unpretentious, made her nod. Okay, she said softly. Tomorrow. When she left, her reflection in the elevator doors looked different, less defeated, more alive. She pressed a hand against her chest, where her heart still beat too fast. Outside, the rain had paused, leaving the streets shining under the pale winter Sunday. She looked up at the glass tower and whispered, "What are you doing, Lila?" Across the floor above, James stood by the window, watching her walk away. His assistant entered, holding a file. "Sir, was that the same woman from the restaurant?" He smiled faintly. Maybe it was. Maybe fate likes second chances. Down on the street, Lila walked toward the bus stop, clutching her sketchbook close. Inside it, a new page waited blank, expectant, as if her pencil already knew it would soon draw more than just the face of a stranger. The next morning, sunlight spilled over the quiet park near the lake. The trees glimmered with dew, and a few ducks floated lazily across the water. Lila stood by the railing, clutching 2 paper cups of coffee. She had arrived early, nervous energy buzzing in her veins. She told herself she was only there to thank him, to return the kindness he had shown. But deep down, she knew that something about James Cole had stayed with her, his calm, his decency, the way he had looked at her as if he saw through the chaos. A small voice broke her thoughts. "Excuse me, are you Miss Lila?" She turned and saw a little girl, maybe 6 years old, holding a small bag of duck feed. Her hair was tied in 2 uneven ponytails, her smile bright and fearless. Behind her, James approached, hands in his coat pockets, that familiar lion pin catching the sunlight. "Emma," he said, "say good morning properly." "Good morning," the child said, tilting her head. "Daddy said you are the lady who saved his favorite suit." Lila laughed, her tension easing. "I think I nearly ruined it, actually." James smiled, taking one of the coffees. "You look more relaxed in daylight," he teased gently. She handed him the cup. "That is because there is no tablecloth to destroy." They sat on a nearby bench while Emma tossed feed to the ducks. The morning breeze carried the scent of fresh grass and roasted beans. "You have a beautiful daughter," Lila said. "Thank you," James replied softly. "She is the best part of me." As they talked, Lila learned that Emma loved to draw animals, and that her mother had passed away 3 years earlier. James spoke about trying to balance work and fatherhood, how he worried that his daughter missed things a mother would have taught her. Lila listened quietly. She did not interrupt, only nodded, her heart tightening with empathy. "You are doing better than you think," she said. "She feels loved. You can see it in how she looks at you." "Oh." He met her eyes, the hint of gratitude deep and unspoken. "And what about you?" he asked. "You talk like someone who knows what it feels like to be alone." Lila hesitated. "I live with my brother. He is sick, but he is strong. I am just trying to keep us both afloat." Something in James's expression softened further. "That takes courage." She smiled faintly. "A friend once told me courage is just doing the next right thing, even when you are terrified." "Sounds like good advice," he said. "You should listen to that friend." They shared a quiet laugh, and for the first time in a long while, Lila felt the heaviness in her chest lift. Emma ran back to them and handed Lila a piece of bread shaped like a heart. "For you," she said. "You look like someone who needs it." The gesture made Lila blink fast to keep from tearing up. "Thank you, sweetheart. I did not know I looked that sad." "You do not anymore," the girl said simply. James watched the exchange, his heart full. Something about Lila's presence felt right, calm, familiar, almost like coming home after a long journey. When the ducks drifted away and the coffee grew cold, he said. You know, I could use someone with your steadiness at my foundation's art program. We work with kids from local shelters. Maybe you would like to help. Lila looked at him in disbelief. You are offering me a job? I am offering you a chance, he said. You have the heart for it. Oh, she hesitated, unsure if she deserved that kindness. But then she thought of her brother, of the endless nights she had whispered promises to keep him safe. She smiled slowly. I would love that. As they stood to leave, Emma slipped her small hand into Lila's. See you tomorrow? The girl asked. Lila nodded. Tomorrow. And as James watched them walking together toward the park gate, he realized the morning no longer felt cold. Something new had begun, quiet, fragile, and real. The following week, the sun rose over Seattle wrapped in soft gold. At the Cole Foundation's community center, children filled the art room with laughter and bright splashes of color. Lila stood among them, helping a small boy paint the wings of a cardboard butterfly. Her sleeves were rolled up, her hair tied loosely at her neck. For the first time in years, she felt like she belonged somewhere. James walked in quietly, a cup of coffee in his hand, watching her from the doorway. She had only been there for a few days, yet the atmosphere had changed completely. The children adored her, the staff respected her, and even the quietest kids seemed to bloom under her patience. Morning, boss, she said when she noticed him, smiling. I did not spill anything today, in case you are keeping score. He laughed softly. I am glad to hear that. The janitor thanks you. They moved through the tables together, admiring the children's drawings. Emma was at one of them, proudly sketching a lion with a crown. This one is brave, she told Lila. Just like your dad, Lila said gently. James looked away for a moment, touched by the words. He had not realized how much he had missed hearing someone say something kind about him, not because of his title, but because of who he was when no one was watching. Later that afternoon, as the center grew quiet, James invited Lila to the rooftop garden for lunch. The city spread out below, gleaming with the brightness of early spring. You built something good here, she said, gazing across the skyline. We built it, he corrected. You have a gift, Lila. The children listen to you. You make them believe that their art matters. She looked down at her hands, embarrassed. I just want them to feel seen. When I was their age, no one really noticed me. Then maybe that is why you are the right person to help them. Oh. For a moment, they simply stood together, the wind moving gently through the plants. The distance between them felt smaller now, yet neither of them said what lingered unsaid in their hearts. That evening, Lila returned home to find her brother sitting up, smiling for the first time in weeks. The medication had started to work. She cooked soup while he told her about his day, her mind drifting again to James, to the foundation, to Emma's laughter echoing through the hall. She did not know that elsewhere, at a grand hotel across town, another woman was also thinking about James Cole. Dressed in a silver gown, Veronica Hayes, James's former fiancée, was speaking to a man in a sharp black suit. You said you could get close to her, Veronica murmured. The woman from the restaurant, the one he keeps around his daughter now. The man nodded once. I have my ways. Good, she said coldly, because that girl has something to hide, and I intend to make sure everyone finds out. Back at her apartment, unaware of the storm forming in the distance, Lila opened her sketchbook and drew another page. James standing in the garden, sunlight on his face. She smiled faintly, whispering, accidents happen for a reason. But fate, she would soon learn, was not done testing them yet. The evening of the Cole Foundation Charity Gala arrived with glittering lights and endless cameras. Lila had spent the whole day helping the children finish their art displays for the event. The grand ballroom smelled of roses and candle wax, and every guest looked like they had stepped out of a magazine. She stood by the entrance, feeling small in her borrowed dress, unaware that her life was about to change again. James spotted her from across the room. He had been shaking hands with donors, his usual calm demeanor masking the exhaustion behind his smile. When their eyes met, he felt the same warmth that had followed him since the park. You made it, he said, when she joined him. You invited me, she answered shyly. I could not say no. Emma ran up to them, wearing a tiny golden dress that matched her father's tie. Miss Lila, your paintings are in the corner. Everyone loves them. Lila laughed softly. They are not mine, sweetheart. They belong to all of us. James watched her with quiet pride. She was radiant, unguarded, completely herself. For a moment, the noise of the ballroom faded. But not far away, Veronica Hayes observed them through a glass of champagne. Her eyes were sharp with envy. "So this is the girl," she murmured to her companion. "Let us see how long her charm lasts." Halfway through the evening, when the lights dimmed for a presentation, a large screen flickered on. At first, the crowd saw clips of children painting and smiling. Then, abruptly, a video appeared. A shaky recording from a phone. It showed Lila at the restaurant weeks earlier, bumping into James, water spilling across the table. Then came the text messages, enlarged for everyone to see. Table 9. Spill the drink. Make a scene. $300 when it is done. A murmur swept through the guests. Lila froze, her breath caught in her throat. "That cannot be real," she whispered, eyes wide with panic. James turned toward her, disbelief written across his face. "Tell me this is not what it looks like." James, please, I did not know it was you. I was desperate, I swear. I never meant to hurt you." Her voice trembled, but the noise of judgment drowned her out. Veronica stepped forward from the crowd, feigning concern. "Oh, poor thing," she said sweetly. "You tricked a man for money and still found your way into his charity. What a story." Lila's heart shattered. The humiliation burned through her chest as cameras flashed, capturing every tear that fell. James said nothing. He only looked at her, hurt and silent, before turning away. Emma clung to her father's hand. "Daddy, she is not bad. Please." He lowered his head, his jaw tight. "We need to go." Lila reached out, but he pulled back, his voice barely above a whisper. Was any of it real? She could not answer. Words had abandoned her. The crowd's whispers filled the space between them until she turned and fled the ballroom, her heels clicking against the marble like echoes of something breaking. Outside, the cold air hit her face. She stumbled into the street, clutching her bag against her chest. Her sketchbook slipped out, falling open to the page of James and Emma in the garden. The drawing stared up at her from the pavement, soft pencil lines now blurred by her tears. For the first time since that night at the restaurant, Lila felt truly lost. She had wanted redemption, and instead, she had become the villain in someone else's story. A full week passed after the gala, yet for Lila, it felt like a lifetime. The story had spread across the city, an anonymous woman exposed for deceiving a millionaire. The news channels exaggerated every detail. People whispered at the diner, and parents stopped bringing their children to the foundation. Her heart ached not for herself, but for Emma, whose smile she missed more than anything. She tried to disappear. She moved quietly through her shifts, avoided the cafe near Cole Tower, and packed away her sketchbook in a drawer. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw James's face, the disbelief, the quiet hurt, and the way he had turned away without a word. Then, one gray afternoon, a letter arrived. The envelope bore the logo of the Cole Foundation. Her hands shook as she opened it. Inside was a single card that read, "The Art of Emma Brooks Exhibition, Saturday, 8 o'clock, Cole Gallery." Her name, Emma Brooks, was the pseudonym she had once used when she first joined the foundation, too shy to sign her real name under her art. For a long moment, Lila stared at the card, unsure whether to laugh or cry. Was this an invitation, or a cruel reminder of what she had lost? Saturday evening came, and curiosity overcame her fear. She walked to the gallery under the soft drizzle, her coat pulled tight. The building glowed with warm light through tall glass windows. Inside, people were gathered in front of framed drawings, her drawings. Every piece she had helped the children create was displayed, with her notes still scribbled in pencil at the edges. At the center of the room hung one large sketch, the lion and the little girl. It was her drawing of Emma holding the lion pin, smiling at her father. Underneath the title read, "Dedicated to the woman who reminded us that mistakes can lead to grace." Lila's breath caught, her knees weakened. "Beautiful, is it not?" a familiar voice said behind her. She turned. James stood there in a black suit, the same lion pin on his lapel. His eyes were softer than she remembered, though sadness still lingered beneath them. "I did not expect you to come," he said quietly. "I did not expect to be invited," she whispered. He looked around the room, his voice low. "I learned what really happened. Veronica hired a private investigator to dig into your life, and when she found those old messages, she twisted them into her own plan. You were her target, not her accomplice." Lila's eyes filled with tears. "You believe me?" "I do now," he said. "And I am sorry I did not believe you then." She took a shaky breath. "You did not owe me that. I was wrong to take that job in the first place." "Oh, maybe," he said gently, "but you turned a mistake into something good. You gave those children hope. You gave my daughter a friend." He extended his hand toward her. "Come back to the foundation. Not because I am asking for forgiveness, but because you belong there." She looked at his hand, then at the crowd admiring the artwork. Her heart swelled with gratitude and relief. Slowly, she placed her hand in his. "Then let us make sure the next chapter is honest," she said softly. He smiled, honest and brave. Around them, the gallery lights gleamed against the glass. For the first time in weeks, Lila felt warmth return to her chest, as if the world was giving her permission to breathe again. The past could not be erased, but maybe, just maybe, it could still be redeemed. Spring came early that year. The city's gray streets began to bloom with cherry blossoms, and the Cole Foundation buzzed with new energy. Children filled the art room again, their laughter echoing down the hallways. At one table, Lila guided a group through a project called Second Chances, teaching them to turn torn scraps of paper into collages of hope. James often stopped by in the afternoons, bringing coffee and quiet smiles. The heaviness that had once stood between them was gone. He had rebuilt trust, not with grand gestures, but with small, steady kindness, remembering her brother's checkups, helping her find a better apartment, and always asking about her day. One afternoon, Emma ran into the art room holding something shiny in her small hands. "Miss Lila," she called. "Look what Daddy made." Lila turned. James stood at the door, looking slightly nervous. In his hand was a small wooden frame, and inside it rested her old sketch, the one that had fallen on the street the night of the gala, the drawing of him and Emma together. "I found this the morning after you left," he said softly. "It reminded me that sometimes we need to lose something to see what it really means." Lila's eyes warmed with tears as she traced the edge of the frame. "You kept it." "I did more than that," James said, stepping closer. "I had it restored." "Oh." Then, from his pocket, he pulled out a small silver ring, simple and unadorned, with a tiny engraving of a lion inside. "You once said courage is doing the next right thing, even when you are terrified," he said. "So here I am, terrified, but ready." The room fell silent except for the sound of children giggling in the distance. "Lila James," he said, voice steady, "will you let me draw the rest of this life with you?" Tears slipped down her cheeks, but her smile was radiant. "Yes," she whispered. "Let us draw it together." Emma clapped her hands, jumping up and down. "I knew it, Daddy. I told you she was the one." Laughter filled the room. James slipped the ring onto her finger, and Lila leaned into his embrace as sunlight poured through the windows, painting gold across the floor. Months later, at a small ceremony inside the gallery, they stood beneath her students' artwork. Above them hung the framed piece titled "The Lion and the Little Girl," now joined by a new one, "The Mistake That Saved Us Both." In the end, the story that began with a spilled glass of water ended with a promise sealed by grace. And for Lila, James, and Emma, that mistake was not a curse. It was a beginning.